Thirdly, this phrase, the church is the pillar of truth, may note the church's duty, not her practice, and what she ought to be, not what she always is. They shall not say this is gratis dictum. I will make it good by parallel instances wherein they shall see the absurdity of their argument. Rulers are not a terror to good works, but to evil. Romans 13, verse 3. If this argument be good, the church is a pillar, she cannot err, then this also is good, that rulers cannot be a terror to good works. None but one that comes from Bedlam would assert the latter, and none but one that comes from Rome would conclude the former. Thus our Saviour saith of his ministers, Ye are the salt of the world, ye are the light of the world. Matthew 5. Ergo, by this argument, this salt could not lose its savour, and no minister can be in the dark. But every one must be infallible. Thus Proverbs 16, verse 10. A divine sentence is in the lips of the king. His mouth transgresseth not in judgment. Ergo, kings are infallible. If the Pope had such a text in the New Testament, the Pope's mouth transgresseth not in judgment, you may easily imagine what triumphs the assertors of infallibility would have made. Who can build a towering confidence upon such pitiful foundations? And yet this doth not inform us of the practice of kings, but acquaints them with their duty, as interpreters agree. Fourthly, this phrase, the pillar and ground of truth, notes the necessity of the Church's ministry, quoad nos, but not the infallibility of her authority. Those are two distinct things, and the one no way consequent upon the other. The utmost which can be squeezed from that phrase is this, that the Church doth support the truth and gospel of Christ in the world, and so doth every sincere, zealous defender of the truth, and especially the ministers and prime champions of the truth, not only when met together in a general council, but also in their single capacities, which I think will be undeniably proved by this argument. The Church was the pillar and ground of truth for the first 300 years after Christ, and the apostles never did it more deserve that name, nor did it ever more discharge that office. But all that time there was no ecumenical council, and that is the only council to whom infallibility is ascribed by the papists. Therefore, either that phrase doth not evince infallibility, or the several pastors of those ages were infallible. Fifthly, the consequence of the argument is false and frivolous. The Church is the pillar of truth, ergo she is infallible. For the same Church may be a pillar of truth and a seat of error. For what is it to be a pillar of the truth, if we draw aside the curtain of the metaphor, but to be a defender of the faith? And who knows not that the same persons may defend the truth and maintain errors with them, unless he be one that never read the Bible nor ecclesiastical history? Who knows not that the same person which defended the truth of Christianity against Jews and pagans did also maintain the doctrine of Jezebel and the heresy of the Nicolaitans, Revelation 2? And that those very men that owned the foundation did build the hay and stubble of false doctrines thereupon, 1 Corinthians 3. And that diverse of the stoutest defenders of the truth of the gospel among the fathers had their errors, as Bellarmine acknowledgeth. Else, if they will stand to the consequence, it will follow by virtue of it. Such a minister preacheth the truth, ergo he is infallible, and cannot preach false doctrine. Such a judge is the pillar of justice in the land, ergo it is impossible he should make an unjust decree. Proclamations are hanged upon such a pillar, ergo a libel cannot be fastened there. Sixthly, their argument proceeds from a declaration of the Church's present state. For what is all that place asserts, that is, that the Church then was a church and pillar of truth, to an assurance of its perpetual continuance in that state, which is quite another thing. Which kind of argumentation, if it might pass for current, it would work brave exploits, for then it would follow, the city of Zion was an habitation of righteousness, a pillar of truth and justice. Ergo the prophet Isaiah was misinformed when he said, The faithful city is become a harlot, it was full of judgment, righteousness lodged in it, but now murderers. Isaiah 1, verse 21. Nay, then the Church of England is orthodox in the Roman sense, probiter. It was the pillar of truth, that is, when it was the Pope's, ergo it is so still. And the Papists slander us when they say we are fallen away. The Church was a virgin in the Apostles' days, saith Agesippus. Ergo she is not now corrupted, nor indeed can be. For I must tell you, the Pope can do more than all the Apostles either pretended or did, for they could not even while they lived wholly keep the Church from actual corruption. But the Pope keeps her from all possibility of corruption. Thus the Pope is omnipotent, and it is no marvel that he is infallible. Section 15. The second place of principal moment alleged for the infallibility of the Church and councils is Matthew 18, verse 17, where all are commanded to hear the Church, and they that hear her not are to be accounted as heathens and publicans. Ergo, the Church of Rome is infallible. For this is the comfort. Whatever is in the premises, Rome's infallibility is in the conclusion. And the Church of Rome, that can dispense with God's laws, may well dispense with syllogistical rules, by which there ought not be by which there ought not to be more in the conclusion than in the premises, but that the law was made for subjects, but not for our sovereign Lord, the Pope. To this may be added another place they vehemently urge, Luke 10, verse 16. He that heareth you, heareth me. Ergo, the Church is infallible. Answer. First, whatever these texts prove, what right hath the Church of Rome to her monopoly of the privileges here conveyed? Or why may not the Greek or English churches and their ministers claim the benefit of them? The words have an indifferent aspect to all of them. Secondly, the consequence is false. Christians must hear the Church and ministers, ergo they are infallible, which I thus prove. Children must obey their parents, and if they do not, they must die for it, Deuteronomy 21. Are parents therefore infallible? Subjects must obey their magistrates, or die for it. Joshua 1, verse 18. Whosoever will not hearken unto thy words, he shall be put to death. It seems then magistrates are infallible. For this is the argument by which the Romanists pretend to prove the infallibility of the high priest of the Jews, because they that would not hear him were to be put to death. Deuteronomy 17. Nay, this very text in Luke 10 destroys that sense which the Romanists would have fallen upon it, would fasten upon it. For seeing it is not the apostles but 70 disciples, and they too not as met in a council, but as preaching the gospel severally, or at most by pairs, whom they are under such dreadful penalties commanded to hear, if it be conclusive for infallibility, it proves the infallibility of every minister, or at least every pair of them. Thirdly, it is agreed between them and us that Christ speaks of the censures of the Church in Matthew 18, and therefore surely, if it prove the Church's infallibility in anything, it must be in the matter they're spoken of, that is, in church censures. But they grant the Church is fallible in her censures, as depending upon testimony and matters of fact, and therefore it is ridiculous to infer from thence her infallibility in other things which are not spoken of in this place. Fourthly, the Church and ministers are to be heard, not simply and in all things, but only in the Lord, in what they speak according to his word. This is denied by the Papists, who positively assert that they are to be heard in all things, and without examination, as we have seen from their own words. It is therefore necessary to say something to overthrow this lawless liberty and boundless authority ascribed by them to the Church, for this is their sroton, or one of their radical mistakes.